I just want to thank you. I'm Senator Mauree Boren. Gregory invited me a lot on his show, the Green Corn Rebellion.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed with him. As you all know, that he's not a very, he doesn't throw his ego out there in a real big way, which is a little unconventional for most politicians. Most politicians cannonball into the pool with our egos front and center. But I think in Oklahoma that qualifies him more to run, because we've had way too much ego in Oklahoma. We've had way too much entitled positions. We've had too many people get in those seats of power where the kingmakers and the gatekeepers have hand-selected the people to serve in those roles. And I think because Gregory has grown up in Shawnee, has had teachers, like the teacher that's hosting us here today, and thank you very much for doing that. Really appreciate that. And he's been taught how to read and write by Oklahoma teachers day in and day out. And he wasn't handed anything to him. Whatever he's had has been by working hard, keeping his nose clean, but mostly listening. Listening to his teachers, listening to his neighbors. And we need a whole lot more listeners at the state capitol and a whole lot less ego. And I think that qualifies Gregory better than anything else I could say. I don't know, Mauree, do you want to say anything about Gregory?
I don't know how to follow that up. Right? Like, I can't do anything but echo the same sentiments, right? I think when you think about the future of Oklahoma and where we are right now, right, we are looking for people with fresh ideas, right? Because politics, the thing that has gotten us to this place, right, is doing the same thing continuously over and over and over, right? And we need a change of opinion, right? A change of thought process, right? In order to make the changes, right, that make Oklahoma a good place to live, right? Where people don't just survive Oklahoma, but they thrive in it. They thrive in it, right? They flourish. So, and when I think about the future of Oklahoma, right, and when I think about everything that we can do, right? How we reimagine in Oklahoma with communities at the heart of it, right? I think about leaders like Gregory, people who are doing that, listening to our communities, right? And that action, right? And that's really big, right? To have people who have been working in communities, right? Not folks when it's just like time to have people come out and vote, right? But people who have been continuously doing that work in our communities, right? And so I'm excited to be here, and this is one of the first, other than my own, right, this is the first campaign launch I've ever been to, right, and I couldn't be more excited about it. So thank you everybody for coming out, right, to be able to see this many people here. I think really kind of speaks really truth to power, the change that Gregory could bring about, and especially when community gets involved, right, because change happens, right, beautiful things happen when community gets involved. So thank you so much for creating this beautiful space, right, and hopefully for getting ready to take us to someplace really amazing.
Thank you so much for saying that. I just want to say real quickly before he tells us why he's running and what he needs from us. There's two main things. That there's an unconditional win that will absolutely happen just because he said yes, and just because he said he wants to give back to the community that brought him to the success that he has in his life. One unconditional win is that we will have more registered voters in this district just because he is running. That's what happens when you have a candidate stand up and say, yes, I'm ready to serve. Automatically, that's part of it. He will register more voters going door to door, finding those that aren't registered. Oklahoma has only 50% of our people are registered to vote, that are qualified to vote. That's one of the reasons, and of those 50%, only 30% are showing up and voting. That's why what happens at the Capitol does not reflect the diversity and the priorities of Oklahomans. That's why there's that disparity. So just by him saying yes, and saying, yes, I'm willing to do it, we're going to have more voices heard on Election Day than if he wasn't stepping forward. The other thing that happens is there's this thing called reverse coattails. And in Georgia, what they found out is when what they looked at is that President Biden overperformed in districts where the person running as a Democrat for House or Senate at the state level lost. So what that meant is that because those people were out knocking doors and saying, "Hey, I need you to show up and vote," even though they didn't cover the gap in that seat, they were getting more turnout of Democrats in those seats that made a difference in Georgia overall. So that reverse coattail effect will help all the up ballot races. So for governor, by Gregory saying yes, there will be an overperformance in this Pot County area and in Shawnee, which will be critical to the governor's race by having a down ballot race. So just by making politics work, making sure that people show up and vote, making sure they're a registered vote, making sure that they're ready and that they understand, and making sure that they're able to bring 3 others or register 3 others, that will make a significant change in our state. So Gregory, I'm grateful that you're willing to take this, and I'm grateful that you're willing to take the skill set that you have. I'm grateful for your bravery and your courage to say yes to Oklahoma, and I can't wait to see all these wins that you're going to have between now and November when you're on the ballot. So tell us why you're ready to run, and tell us what we can do to help you.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Ms. Thompson, for letting me have this here. I remember when I was in high school, my senior year, I told you on an assignment I had to do that I was going to run for office one day, and here I am.
One of the few people who's been true to his word.
Yeah. Thank you, Mauree and Mary, for the kind words. So, as you all know, my name is Gregory Hardin. Gregory Hardin II, more specifically, named after my father, who is a hardworking man, lived here in Shawnee for about a little over 40 years. One of the reasons why I'm running is education. I know that it's kind of, talked about a lot, and it's gotten worse over the years, but it's something that I think about every day because I'm in the classrooms every day, because I'm a substitute teacher. I substitute at my old high school. I substitute at the middle school, even at Bethel a little bit as well. And I've even gotten a sub over at North Ark Creek, the school that I went to elementary at. And getting to see, like, the books that I used in elementary school when I went to elementary school still being used, kind of not great. I remember I subbed for Miss Bell. I believe she is gone now, but I subbed for about 1.5 years ago. And one of the social studies books, it looked familiar. I was like, there's no way they're still using this. And I opened it up, and it says Brad Henry's governor. And I'm like, oh, well, this is not great. But yeah, and another thing that whenever I tell people that I'm going to school to become a teacher, they say, oh, do you plan on staying in Oklahoma? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, why? You don't get paid anything? And I'm like, well, someone has to do the work. Someone has to stay here to educate the children and to make sure that society in Oklahoma still keeps going. The teacher pay needs to be raised, and stuff like that. Another reason why I'm running is criminal justice reform. We've seen some movement with that here in this state, but things like 780 and 781 that were passed in 2016, which is the first time I ever got to vote. That's how young I am. 780 was supposed to decriminalize substances so they're misdemeanor, so we save money on them. 781, we're supposed to use that money to push for rehabilitation, and that hasn't actually been followed through on. Why is that? It's not because of the Democrats up there at the Capitol, it's because of the Republicans. They're the ones with the power. They're not doing anything about it. Let's see. Another reason why I'm running is workers' rights, empowering workers. It's a big one for me. My dad, he worked at Wolverine, now he works at Eaton, and whenever I was growing up, he worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in order to, you know, provide for me and my mother, and in order for us to add on to our house. And I think even back then, I knew that, you know, 12 hours every day is like a lot, but I also started to realize as I got older that the minimum wage hasn't been raised properly in decades, and the cost of living keeps going up, and unions, their powers diminishing all the time, and that's another reason why I'm running. I want to empower workers, so therefore no one has to work that much in order to provide for their families. And the last thing, the reason why I'm running, I have a little funny story with this. Some of you have heard it. Communication and transparency. Now, the incumbent, my opponent, Del Curbs, he had a chat with him a few years ago in Starbucks about a state question. It was 788, the medical marijuana state question. And I asked him what his stance was on it, because it was a few weeks before the vote in June. And he, and I also asked him if the state legislature was going to do something about it, like to change it in the special session. And he said, first of all, before I answer you, I want to let you know I don't like the way that you talk about me on social media. It kind of makes me not, what is it he said? He said, it makes me not feel comfortable about, it gets in the way of me talking to you about things going on at the Capitol. And I paused for a little bit and I just said, okay. And then he went on to not tell me what his stance was on medical marijuana and gave me a non-answer about the other question that I asked. So that's Del Curbs for you. If that's the way that you're going to treat a constituent who never has said anything that crazy about you on social media except for run-of-the-mill criticisms, you probably shouldn't be in office, because that's not the way that you should talk to a constituent, especially one that's like half your age. I was like 20 at the time. So yeah. Oh, and the funnier part about it is that he used to come into McDonald's whenever I worked there, and I never saw him after that, and so I guess I scared him off from McDonald's.
It's
Yeah.
healthier for him, I bet.
I'm sure it is. But yeah, those are the reasons why I'm running. What I have to ask of you guys is that you please donate, contribute in any kind of way that you can. Thank you all for coming. It means a lot. That's pretty much all I can think of. Yeah.